B. Of the Treasury shall pay to each state which has an approved plan for services for crippled children, for each quarter, beginning the quarter commencing July 1, 1935, an amount which shall be used exclusively for carrying out the state plan, equal to 1/2 of the total sum expended during such quarter for carrying out such plan. B. The method of computing and paying such amounts shall be as follows. 1. The Secretary of Labor shall, prior the beginning of each quarter, estimate the amount to be paid to the state for such quarter under the provisions of subsection A. Such estimate to be based on a report filed by the state containing its estimate of the total sum to be expended in such quarter in accordance with the provisions of such subsection and stating the amount appropriated or made available by the state and its political subdivisions for such expenditures in such quarter, and if such amount is less than 1/2 of the total sum of such estimated expenditures, the source or sources from which the difference is expected to be derived, and b. such investigation as he may find necessary. 2. The Secretary of Labor shall then certify the amount so estimated by him to the Secretary of the Treasury, reduced or increased, as the case may be, by any sum by which the Secretary of Labor finds that his estimate for any prior quarter was greater or less than the amount which should have been paid to the state for such quarter, except to the extent that such sum has been applied to make the amount certified for any prior quarter greater or less than the amount estimated by the Secretary of Labor for such prior quarter. 3. The Secretary of the Treasury shall thereupon, through the Division of Disbursement of the Treasury Department, and prior to audit or settlement by the General Accounting Office, pay to the state, at the time or times fixed by the Secretary of Labor, the amount so certified. Operation of State Plans, Section 515. In the case of any state plan for services for crippled children which has been approved by the Chief of the Children's Bureau, if the Secretary of Labor, after reasonable notice and opportunity for hearing to the state agency administering or supervising the administration of such plan, finds that in the administration of the plan there a failure to comply substantially with any provision required by Section 513 to be included in the plan, he shall notify such state agency that further payments will not be made to the state until he is satisfied that there is no longer any such failure to comply. Until he is so satisfied, he shall make no further certification to the Secretary of the Treasury with respect to such state. Part 3. Child Welfare Services, Section 521. A. For the purpose of enabling the United States, through the Children's Bureau, to cooperate with state public welfare agencies establishing, extending, and strengthening, especially in predominantly rural areas, public welfare services, hereinafter in this section referred to as child welfare services, for the protection and care of homeless, dependent, and neglected children, and children in danger of becoming delinquent, there is hereby authorized to be appropriated for each fiscal year, beginning with the year ending June 30, 1936, the sum of $1,500,000. Such amount shall be allotted by the Secretary of Labor for use by cooperating state public welfare agencies on the basis of plans developed jointly by the state agency and the Children's Bureau, to each state $10,000, and the remainder to each state on the basis of such plans, not to exceed such part of the remainder as the rural population of such state bears to the total rural population of the United States. The amount so allotted shall be expended for payment of part of the cost of district, county, or other local child welfare services in areas predominantly rural, and for developing state services, for the encouragement and assistance of adequate methods of community child welfare organization in areas predominantly rural and other areas of special need. The amount of an allotment to a state under this section for any fiscal year remaining unpaid to such state at the end of such fiscal year shall be available for payment to such state under this section until the end of the second succeeding fiscal year. No payment to a state under this section shall be made out of its allotment for any fiscal year until its allotment for the preceding fiscal year has been exhausted or has ceased to be available. B. From the sums appropriated therefore, and the allotments available under subsection A, the Secretary of Labor shall from time to time certify to the Secretary of the Treasury the amounts to be paid to the states, and the Secretary of the Treasury shall, through the Division of Disbursement of the Treasury Department, and prior to audit or settlement by the General Accounting Office, make payments of such amounts from such allotments at the time or times specified by the Secretary of Labor. Part 4. Vocational Rehabilitation, Section 531. A. In order to enable the United States to cooperate with the states and Hawaii in extending and strengthening their programs of vocational rehabilitation of the physically disabled, and to continue to carry out the provisions and purposes of the Act entitled An Act to provide for the promotion of vocational rehabilitation of persons disabled in industry or otherwise and their return to civil employment, approved June 2, 1920, as amended, U.S.C. Title 29, Chapter 4, U.S.C. Supplement 7, Title 29, Sects 31, 32, 34, 35, 37, 39, and 40, there is hereby authorized to be appropriated for the fiscal years ending June 30, 1936, and June 30, 1937, the sum of $841,000 for each such fiscal year in addition to the amount of the existing authorization, and for each fiscal year thereafter the sum of $1,938,000 of the sums appropriated pursuant to such authorization. For each fiscal year, $5,000 shall be apportioned to the Territory of Hawaii, and the remainder shall be apportioned among the several states, in the manner provided in such Act of June 2, 1920, as amended. B. For the administration of such Act of June 2, 1920, as amended, by the federal agency authorized to administer it, there is hereby authorized to be appropriated for the fiscal years ending June 30, 1936, and June 30, 1937, the sum of $22,000 for each such fiscal year in addition to the amount of the existing authorization, and for each fiscal year thereafter the sum of $102,000. Part 5. Administration, Section 541. A. There is hereby authorized to be appropriated for the fiscal year ending June 30, 1936, the sum of $425,000 for all necessary expenses of the Children's Bureau in administering the provisions of this title, except Section 531. B. The Children's Bureau shall make such studies and investigations as will promote the efficient administration of this title, except Section 531. C. The Secretary of Labor shall include in his annual report to Congress a full account of the administration of this title, except Section 531, Title 6, Public Health Work Appropriation, Section 601. For the purpose of assisting states, counties, health districts, and other political subdivisions of the states in establishing and maintaining adequate public health services, including the training of personnel for state and local health work, there is hereby authorized to be appropriated for each fiscal year, beginning with the fiscal year ending June 30, 1936, the sum of $8 million, to be used as hereinafter provided. State and local public health services, Section 602. A. The Surgeon General of the Public Health Service, with the approval of the Secretary of the Treasury, shall, at the beginning of each fiscal year, allot to the states the total of 1. The amount appropriated for such year pursuant to Section 601, and 2. The amounts of the allotments under this section for the preceding fiscal year remaining unpaid to the states at the end of such fiscal year. The amounts of such allotments shall be determined on the basis of 1. The population, 2. The special health problems, and 3. the financial needs of the respective states. Upon making such allotments, the Surgeon General of the Public Health Service shall certify the amounts thereof to the Secretary of the Treasury. B. The amount of an allotment to any state under subsection A, for any fiscal year remaining unpaid at the end of such fiscal year, shall be available for allotment to states under subsection A, for the succeeding fiscal year, in addition to the amount appropriated for such year. C. Prior to the beginning of each quarter of the fiscal year, the Surgeon General of the Public Health Service shall, with the approval of the Secretary of the Treasury, determine in accordance with rules and regulations previously prescribed by such Surgeon General, after consultation with a conference of the state and territorial health authorities, the amount to be paid to each state for such quarter from the allotment to such state, and shall certify the amount so determined to the Secretary of the Treasury. Upon receipt of such certification, the Secretary of the Treasury shall, through the Division of Disbursement of the Treasury Department, and prior to audit or settlement by the General Accounting Office, pay in accordance with such certification. D. The money so paid to any state shall be expended solely in carrying out the purposes specified in Section 601, and in accordance with plans presented by the health authority of such state, and approved by the Surgeon General of the Public Health Service.